Hey friends, welcome to another week of the JOANNA WHALEY podcast. Before we get started, if you're somebody who wants to support the work of helping LGBTQ people find spiritual hope and get care for the complicated world of navigating spirituality and who you love or how you identify, I have an awesome way that you can do that. Maybe if you're somebody who doesn't want to join Patreon, have a monthly subscription fee, you can actually help subsidize and pay for a lot of the free work that I do. There's many people who it isn't safe for them to have spiritual care and pay for it. So you can go to joannawhaley.com/pay and you can cover their spiritual care that they receive from me. That's joannawhaley.com/pay. On the other side of the music, we're going to begin a whole conversation about the interview with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. For my live friends watching, welcome. How are you doing? It's so nice to see you. It is a holiday weekend when I'm recording this. So it was the Wild West. It was bare bones in the first recording tonight. For those who listen to this show asynchronously, if you will, this show, there's 2 live recordings that happen on Sunday nights, and I usually pick the best of the 2, so we'll see how this one goes. But it's been a great night, and what I want to talk about today is, you know, if you've noticed a format change on my podcast, that's because there has been a pretty significant format change of the content I cover, what I talk about on this show, and I talk about a lot of what's going on in the current world, in the current media, in the news. And I talk about the implications of LGBTQ people, specifically in the religious space when it comes to those things. So today, what I want to talk about is, this week, in the last week running up to the interview with Vice President Harris and Tim Walz. There was so much hype over this interview as it was coming up. And I just remember it was all over the news. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. This is big deal, right? And then I don't know if you're like me, and I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I listened to it and I was kind of like, okay, that was an interview. It was all this hype for the interview. And I just remember thinking to myself, it reminded me of the time when I was a young musician and I would get all hyped up for a show, right? Not like school band. I wasn't as good of a musician for that. But when I was in my rock band as a kid, I remember we'd get all pumped up for these shows and tell everyone about it. And then it'd be like our moms watching us and be like, that's kind of a disappointment, kind of a letdown. But eventually I, kept working at it, made a career out of music. And then I became like a touring musician and be on the road every night. You'd be playing a stadium of 10,000 people one night, and then the next night you're playing at a youth group with 5 kids. Very underwhelming. And it would be really easy in that night to go, you just take the night and you think that's how it is, right? You can begin to spiral yourself into doom and gloom. But I want to ask the question today, and where the space that I operate in on this show is, is LGBTQ and religious freedom, right? Is religious spaces and the inclusion and the full inclusion of LGBTQ people. And so my question today is, how do you stay positive about LGBTQ religious progress when it is so freaking slow, right? How do you deal with it when it's so slow? Well, it just reminds me of, and that's what this interview reminded me of, this interview with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on CNN. And I thought to myself as I was watching it, I was like, okay, it would be really easy to be like, oh my gosh, the sky's falling, right? Which there's many people on certain news networks that believe that that's happening. But when I look at it, I just think, okay, well, I heard a lot of good things in there, and nothing was groundbreaking in that interview, and that's okay. And so I'm going to play you a clip from the interview, and this is what this was. I'll just play this clip, and we'll talk about it on the other side of the audio. Here we go.
If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward, in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism. I think, sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation, and I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now.
So one thing she really talked about there, and just so everyone is aware, feel free to join the conversation. If you're on TikTok Live, hit the request to join button. I'd be happy to get you here in the conversation. Be over 18, be respectful. Let's have a great conversation here. If you're watching on Facebook, feel free to leave a comment. If you're watching any other time, you go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/live, and you can leave me a voicemail or a text there. So, now, a lot of people were upset, like didn't really answer the question, did eventually. But what I don't mind this, because there were some things said there that I really resonate with. We're ready to turn the page. As a queer person, as a queer Christian, yes, I'm I'm an LGBTQ Christian, I'm a transgender woman, and I'm Christian. Go figure, right? But as someone who lives in those camps, it has been an era of such negativity. It has been such a challenging time to live as a queer person. And for someone to walk through life and all you hear in the news media and in your social media feeds from those who claim a Christian, loving Christian faith, such negativity, it's time to turn the page on it. We're tired of it. I mean, are we? Aren't we just collectively tired of just the negativity? And people tell me all the time, and I said this in my first recording tonight, I am a hopeless optimist. I hope so. Exhausted. Nathan said exhausting. It is so exhausting. And it's so exhausting to turn on your phone, to pull up a feed when you're just trying to relax and just scroll for a little bit mindlessly, right? And you see Crazy Karen from the Baptist Church Convention of Latter-day whatever, who's sharing something horribly, horribly homophobic. It's just like, we're tired of this. And nothing summed that up more than what Kamala Harris's response to the question about Donald Trump questioning her race. I love it. And I think we can learn from it. Let's take a listen to this clip, and it's genius, and we'll talk about it.
I was a little bit surprised. People might be surprised to hear that you have never interacted with him, met him face to face. That's going to change soon. But what I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any?
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
I love it. I mean, what a great response to not even dignify it with a response on television in front of millions of people. He had an opportunity to like hit back and clap back, but she didn't. And that to me is something we can learn in the LGBTQ community, especially to those who throw Bible passages at us, especially to those who tell us we are an abomination, right? And I love this because I feel like I can look at it and just say, same old, moving on. I think sometimes the worst damage we do to ourselves is dignifying spiritual bullying about who we are and who we love with a response. If you take one day, well, take 10 minutes and go through my social media feeds, especially on TikTok. I would say go back a couple months because I put in a lot of moderation tools recently. But the absolute spiritual bullying that I get online every single day, I don't even dignify with a response. It's not worth it. It isn't worth it. And I've been doing this for years. People saying, you're not a woman, you're not a woman, you're not a woman. They'll try to poke you and they'll try to prod you and they'll try to tell you you're in love, you're a guy and you're in love with another guy. You're an abomination, you're going to hell. Don't even dignify it with a response because it's not worth it. Because no comment is going to change someone's mind. I have never in a million years turned someone from being hyper-conservative to being a full LGBTQ ally within a comment section. It's never happened. Okay? No one's listening to each other. Everyone's just trying to get their points out there. So I think it would be so good of us and so wise of us in the LGBTQ community, especially if you're a queer person of faith, no matter what your faith is, when you start to hear your own faith being bullied against you, just don't even dignify it with a response. Same old, same old. This morning, I was singing at my church and our church every year participates in this like festival that happens in the city. It's a huge festival that happens like thousands and thousands of people. And our church does a service at one of the stages. And it was funny because this morning I was sharing my story of being a trans woman of faith, shared a song that I wrote. And after I got done, I walked past and there was a political, there was like a tent right there by where our stage was where they could clearly hear me speaking. And it was a Trump merchandise tent with some of the most homophobic and transphobic merchandise printed on t-shirts. And I just laughed. I kind of nodded my head. And in my head, because I had listened to this clip, I just thought, same old, same old. And I just moved on with my day. Now, there's times for action, right? There's times for action. And we have to find the right ways to advocate. And it's not going to be in a comment section. I guarantee you that. join the conversation. Be over 18. Be respectful. Leave a comment. I would love to interact with you here on the show today. If you're listening any other time of the week, if you went back to work after Labor Day, feel free. Go to JOANNAWHALEY.com/live. Leave me a text message. Shoot me a voicemail. I would love to get you on the show. We have so many clips today, but I want to share this one. It's from part of the interview with Vice President Harris, and we'll talk about it on the other side. Let's take a quick listen and chat about it.
You had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Anyone
Yes,
in
I
mind?
would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with this election, so I'm not putting the cart before the horse. But I would. I think it's really important. I have spent my career inviting diversity of opinion. I think it's important to have people at the table when some of the most important decisions are being made that have different views, different experiences. And I think it would be to the benefit of the American public to have a member of my cabinet who was a Republican.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this right here, to me, is also something we can learn in the LGBTQ community, especially in the religious community. Okay? Hear me out. Christians, if you don't have a queer person in leadership in your church, or somebody who's LGBTQ speaking into things in your church, you are missing a diversity of opinion. You're really missing something important. And if you find yourself, in an LGBTQ space or an affirming church, right? You're in an affirming church and you're like, woo, we're like flying the rainbow flag on our church, like everywhere. It's everywhere. And you don't have someone in your church who doesn't agree with you, you're missing out on the big picture. You're going to miss something. And so I think that that's really important to have. And it's something we've lost, especially in today's world. We've lost the ability to speak kindly and to learn from one another. I can't tell you the amount of times I've sat across from a pastor of some big megachurch who I worked with in the past and had coffee with after I came out and transitioned, and just had a loving, disagreeable conversation, like a disagreement in conversation. And so this was something that I value. I still value this today. And I said, okay, I'm going to put this out there. I said it earlier today. I'm going to say this. If you are a church out there, if you're some big mega church and you believe that being LGBTQ is a sin, I'm going to put an offer out there, and I don't ever do free gigs, okay? But if you're a church that's over 2,000 people, okay? Over 2,000 people, and if you let me come and preach at your church about being LGBTQ and Christian, I'll come do it for free. I will. Be over 2,000 people. I will preach at your church for free. I don't want to be on a panel. You'll have to pay me if you bring me on a panel. Let me preach at your church. And let me show your church how a queer person can hold faith. Invite the difference of opinion in. See what happens. And so these are things that are so important, and we've lost the ability to do this because I had a youth pastor. I really loved this guy. He really shaped me spiritually, really shaped my life and my spiritual journey and my leadership. And I still love and respect him so much. And his name's Adam. And Adam taught me and taught us all this leadership principle called unedited. Basically saying that people will live the unedited version of your life. And it sounds funny, but the reality is that, like, if you're a leader in a church, if you are a political leader, if you are whatever, what you say, people will take with and they'll run with, and they will live the unedited version of that, right? So, for example, right? Like, if you're, and this is a terrible example, but it's like, if you punch someone in the face from stage and you're like, this is cool, the crowd in your church will be emboldened to punch 10 people in the face because that's the unedited version. So what's happening is that the Christian church has so fallen in love with poor leaders in the political sphere. I'm just going to say, in Donald Trump, have fallen for a poor leader and are living the unedited version of this. So pastors are taking and running with this rhetoric, this dehumanizing rhetoric. Rhetoric like we heard after the CNN interview. Donald Trump went on a tirade about Kamala Harris. I'm going to play a couple clips from him, and we'll talk more about this because it matters to those of us in the queer community.
I just saw her, Tulsi, she was sitting behind a desk doing this interview. And I said, Dana Bash, you could make yourself big tonight. All you have to do is be fair. I haven't seen the questions, but they gave out a sample. In fact, she's going to be on later on tonight with a taped. It was a taped. We're doing it live. Why are we doing it live and she's doing it taped? But
that's right, he's real.
But she was sitting behind that desk, this massive desk, and she didn't look like a leader to me, I'll be honest. I don't see her negotiating with President Xi. Well, the first thing I want to do is say, why isn't it live? It's not a live interview. It's an interview that's going to be taped and then edited and then put out. So that's not even an interview. Then she's doing it with her vice president sitting there. So she's not very smart. When they ask her a question that she can't answer, she'll just look at him. You answer it.
So she's not very smart, right? Ridiculing like how she's sitting and looking and all these things. But what this does is it allows when you accept from leaders, when you accept from the leadership of your political sphere to talk about other people like this. And when pastors become so in love with that leader and so enamored with that leader, they begin to speak about others from their pulpits about people in such negative and derogatory ways. And what that does is that gives the congregation license to absolutely treat everyone else like total garbage. And that's what's happening. We are watching pastors fall in love with a poor leader of a political party because they were told in seminary that they can't be Democrat and Christian. And then they're going on their stages and they're living the unedited version of that. And they're using the Bible to give it authority and weight. And then people are going out with the talking points and playing telephone with Jesus. And that's how we end up with stuff like this from a Christian.
What are your thoughts on gay marriage?
I'm against it.
Yeah?
Yep.
And why is that?
Because of my religious belief.
And what religion are you?
I'm a Lutheran.
Lutheran. Because in the Bible, Leviticus, if a man lays with a man as he lays with a woman, surely he should be put to death. It's against it there?
Yep.
Also in Leviticus, it says you can't eat pork. Have you ever eaten pork?
A lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a reality. It's cherry picked. It's pulling from the talking points. And it's all coming from failed. Here's a nice conservative term. It's trickle-down failure. That's exactly what it is. We have a church. We have people that have listened to a failed leader, and the failure is trickling down. And the reality is that it's affecting queer people. Queer people face the brunt of trickle-down failure of leadership. I'm going to say that again. Because I'm a preacher, you can't take it out of me. LGBTQ people are taking the brunt of trickle-down leadership failure. It's just the reality. So, we have to find a way to do better. We've got to find a way. We've got to find a way to be able to hear each other again. Said I'm a hopeless optimist. I get it. I know I am. I know. But I'm okay with that. I've got some thoughts here, and I want to give you three thoughts on this idea. How do we stay positive when LGBTQ religious progress seems slow? I'll give you three things, right? It won't be a pneumatic thing. That would be way too preacher of me to do that. But I'll give you 3 points, because a 3-point sermon, of course, is great, right? This isn't a sermon, this is a podcast. But the first one is, don't give up when the moment disappoints you. Don't give up when it's disappointing. When the interview didn't go like you thought it would. When the conversation didn't quite go the way you thought it would. When the law gets passed that you were hoping and praying wouldn't. Don't give up. Don't give up when one moment disappoints. Don't do it. The second one, for my sports ball friends out there who love sports ball. As a trans woman, I played my fair share of sports ball as a young kid. The second one is, even the greatest champions have had really bad losses. You have to understand, even really good teams, they take one in the chin once in a while. It's a football reference. But that's something that we have to understand. Even the greatest teams in the world have bad losses sometimes. And the third thing is, LGBTQ religious rights is a 100-year game. Don't give up because of today. Don't give up because the thing fell through. Again, because the law got passed or because the preacher said something. Don't give up because of that. This is a 100-year game. This is something that I've come to terms with this in my life. I've come to terms with the fact that I may never see LGBTQ liberation in religion in my lifetime. I may never see it. But maybe in 100 years, maybe. But I'm not going to give up because today is hard. And I think that's something we really have to lean into a little bit. Is understand we're playing a really long game in the fight for LGBTQ liberation in religion. It's a really long game, and it's slow and it's frustrating. We have a lot more show to go. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We're going to go to a quick commercial break and carry this conversation on. We've got a lot more stuff to talk about on today's show. We're happy you're here. Stick around, and we will carry on this conversation.